Hello, everyone. You are very welcome to this week's community show. We are in the month of March, and we want to talk about issues to do with women. We are discussing issues of women. In this month, we celebrate women. We highlight the importance of having women emancipation, women empowerment, and also having equality between women and men. In this week's show, we want to talk about how women, rural women, can use the law to champion for their rights, how they can use specifically an act that was passed in 2019 to enforce their to demand for better services, to demand for as women in their different spaces. And today we have framed the topic of discussion as Human Rights Enforcement Act, a tool for rural women's rights in Uganda. Is it indeed a tool for women's rights in Uganda? Our discussants will help us understand this topic further and how they perceive it. I am joined by Tracy and Hanipher to help us discuss this further. And I'll also ask each of them to introduce themselves, and then we shall kick off the discussion. I'll begin with you, Tracy, and then Hanipher.
My name is Tracy Nabbaale. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I work at the Center for Food and Adequate Living Rights. You can abbreviate it as CFROT. And at CFROT, I lead the Social Justice and Strategic Litigation Program. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone here. I'm called Nakimera Hanipher. I'm from Bara. I work with a new organization, FRAHECA, Fragile Hearts Care and Empowerment Foundation. We basically work on empowering women, especially the rural woman. So I'm glad to be here, and I believe and pray that by the end of this show, we'll have impacted many lives of Ugandan women. Thank you.
Thank you. To you, Tracy, first of all, what does it mean to be a rural woman from your perspective?
Thank you so much. When I think about, because okay, there are women in Uganda, but then there are those women that are privileged and those that are not. So when you talk about a vulnerable rural woman, I look at this woman who only survives on subsistence farming. And in this case, a woman wakes up, she will go to a garden to farm, then later come back at home, look after their children, then probably prepare a meal for the husband, and it is the husband who's going to determine if they have gone to the garden and harvested crops. It's the husband who's going to determine where he sells the crops and how the money is going to be used or distributed. So a rural woman is, when you talk about a rural woman, I look at a woman who only depends on one piece of land for housing, food, even livelihood. The food they grow, she uses that particular piece of land to grow the food, which probably they will sell and get money to look after them or to take their children to school. And also a rural woman is very many rural women cannot even earn just $1 in a day. They only survive on subsistence farming. That's why when we talk about rural women and advocating for their rights, we look at things like adequate living rights, or what you can also call subsistence rights, like the right to food, the right to land, because land is a means of production, and this is what they depend on entirely. We look at economic rights, social security. If this social security includes also income security, if this woman has harvested crops, can she benefit from the money that has been got from the crops that she has used? So basically, a rural woman, it's hard to give just one definition, but in brief, that is it from me.
Okay, thank you very much for that definition. Hanipher, would your definition differ, or would you add?
Well, thank you so much. I also believe it's hard to get a clear definition of a rural woman, because if, for example, even the allocation, you find these are the people who stay in those hard-reached areas, that makes them rural women. Then also their privileges, you find they don't have the access to most of the things like people who stay in urban areas. The environment, even their mindset, the way they earn, their lifestyle, the services they get. So basically, I think a rural woman gets like the least or nothing of what they are supposed to be getting. In fact, some even don't know what they deserve. As I was telling you about the mindset, you find someone is in a certain situation, and maybe she deserves a better one, but even themselves, they don't know that they deserve better or they can get better. So I think a rural woman it takes a lot. It really takes a lot, like how Tracy has said. You can't just define a rural woman with just a single word or a sentence. It takes a lot. So I think we shall see a lot and talk a lot, but basically, I believe that not just being in the locations where they are, but even their mindset, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to make them feel that they are worth it. They are more than what they see or who they are. So that's how briefly I can talk about a rural woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. From both your understandings of rural woman, you have talked about the issue of privilege, that they are in one or the other less privileged than those in rural areas. Now, we know that, of course, women in Uganda and perhaps all over the world are a minority group. Women are less privileged because of the historical injustices that, which have also continued. There are a lot of power imbalances. There is literally inequality and iniquity in every, society that is really biased against women, from access to livelihood, from the basic, right to life, which also involves livelihood, that many women are not even able to access work and all that, to even others like access to justice, name it. So when you talk about privileges, that they do not have the kind of privileges that urban women have, and this is for you, Tracy, what do you mean by these privileges? Are you referring to privileges? Are you referring to rights? What are some of these privileges that you are referring to? And what is the distinction between the rural women's access to those privileges and what is the disparity of access to those privileges that you term privilege? What is the disparity between the rural woman and the men? For example, yes, not necessarily the town women, but the men.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to relate this to access to justice. So you will agree with me that rural women, first of all, as a woman, you're a bit disadvantaged when you compare yourself to a man. And now it becomes worse if you are you're a vulnerable rural woman. First of all, like I explained earlier, these women depend on their entire life is subsistence. Rarely do they go to work to a corporate office. Actually, they don't. To a corporate office and you earn a monthly salary and probably you can afford a lawyer. So the first problem or barrier towards access to justice is poverty. If their rights have been violated, a woman is just going to probably go to a neighbor and explain or rant, oh, this one did this one did this. They do not have the capacity to even go, not even transport to go to courts of law. You know how you will agree with me that good lawyers are very expensive. A rural woman will not be able to afford a good lawyer. So one of the barriers or less privileges way is poverty. Then the second one is language barrier. Rural women, you will agree with me that they have not gone to school. The language of court is English. So if I do not know English, how am I going to go to court and seek justice? I mean, the language of court is English, the plaint is drafted in English, everything is in English, and I do not know English. That means I am stuck. I don't have anywhere to go to seek access to justice of my rights that have been violated. Then thirdly, I will look at the technicalities of the law. If Martin, you're a lawyer, and you know that if the law says that if this and this has happened and I have a cause of action and I have to use a plaint and I dare use a chamber summons, they are going to strike it out. And a rural woman does not know that. So they are, I will say they are stuck at all sides. They don't have the money. Even if they had the money, they don't know the language. Even if they know the language, they do not know the legal technicalities. So they are stuck on all sides. And because of that, you will see that the violation of their rights are rampant. Because, first of all, because they are women. Then secondly, because they are rural women who do not even have money.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for that. Hanipher, you've heard what Tracy has said, that there are a number of course, challenges, and she has concentrated on majorly the justice, the disparity in access to justice of women. And what are there some other kind of challenges, that you've seen women, particularly rural women, suffer specifically because of their position as rural women in regard to other quote unquote privileges, but I would prefer calling them rights, because rights are, of course, that accrue to each and every person by the virtue of them being human beings. What are those that you've?
Well, thank you so much, Martin. A rural woman has faced a lot of challenges, and actually some have even reached an extent of believing that life stops at that. Some don't even know that there could be another life. So there's a lot. I'll highlight a few, like there's always a challenge of lack of that self-esteem. Like you find someone is there, they lost hope. They really don't think that life can change. So that has really, it's a very big challenge because it brings someone to feel that they can't be something better than who they are. So it's a challenge. They can't like try to improve on their lives. They can't even try to inquire. They are just there, you know, like being stagnant in life. So there's also another challenge of literacy. Tracy has talked about it. Then education. These women, they are like living in a circle of like a chain of problems. Imagine a mother is not educated. That means even their children, they will not go for education. Then those children, they will get married at a very young age. They're also having kids, as in you find problems are recycling. It's a chain of problems. So I believe there is also that challenge of not getting good education. Even those who try, the schools they go to, there are these, I don't know that Martin, you know that there are schools where you find whether the teacher or the pupils themselves, like the certain school I went to there inside that side of Isingiro, you could really see that there is no big difference between a teacher and a pupil. They are all the same. Some even were putting on sandals. The way they, like a teacher, really, you couldn't believe that a teacher can be in that state. So imagine your child is in that school, a mother is not educated, and the child will come out like that. Really, I believe that education is also a very big challenge. Like if it could be worked on, then it can uplift those women. Maybe if their kids went to school, they can bring an impact home and life changes. There's also another challenge of ignorance. These people, they don't know what to do. You find a woman is there. There are these ones who wake up. What she can do is to go to the garden and dig. Then they will come, they prepare lunch. If it's there, the day one, day two, like that, a month, a year, and it's just like that. So they are just ignorant. They don't know who to talk to. Even you find the leaders in those areas, they have not taken a courtesy of awakening these people. So that's why I call upon everyone that maybe it could bring a positive change if we all worked on empowering these women. Some of those women at the grassroots, they are talented, they have special gifts, and even they are very brilliant. They are skilled, but because they are there ignorant, you know, like when you're in this dark room, there's nothing you think is outside that can bring light for you. So I believe those are the few challenges. And maybe another challenge I can talk about in terms of getting justice. Even I doubt if there is always fair justice to those people. There's an incident that I watched myself where this lady had issues with the husband. So she went to LC1 chairperson. And you can't believe those people, they were like, no, a woman, you're not supposed to take your husband to courts of law. And really, if that woman like we all left, but I doubt if she got peace at home, because the environment, the people around were saying, no, this is an abomination. How could you take your husband to courts of law? But look, this lady, she was battered. She was, she was always beaten at home, and she was expecting help from these people. So I also think there hasn't been fair justice for women. And again, also the government hasn't done what it's supposed to do. Things stop here in urban areas. If I must quote like ours, like what we are doing here, I doubt if a woman really can get a chance to listen to such things, and they need to know. They need to know these things such that they know how and what to do in case they're in danger. So basically, Martin, that's what I can think. That's what I can give. I think there are a lot of challenges. We shall go on slowly as the show goes on.
Thank you for that, indeed. And yes, it's good that both of you have actually talked about access to justice. We've talked about courts of law, and it will be something that we have to look at in this discussion. Now, I want to, before we go into the discussion on enforcement and access to justice, courts of law, I want to bring in Goodluck, who has also just joined us. Goodluck is a man, and I want him to help us understand from his perspective, what is the plight of a rural woman, the contemporary world.
Good morning, Alex, and everyone listening to us this afternoon. Thank you for this topic. A rural woman, I would want to discuss from health side, because the other panelists have also used other sectors or sections. A few years in 2021, there's an organization called Center for Health, Human Rights and Development. It filed a lawsuit as a result after 2 rural women died after going to a government health facility, and clearly there were questions. The dead, to remind the readers, the listeners, we have Ms. Anguko and Naruroa. These were women scattered across the country. They are not from the urban setting, so they went to the health centers to produce a child and be like others, and be like us who come out of the hospitals or health centers happy with the children and the women and our wives. But incidentally, they never made it. So court in 2020, during the lockdown, actually when all of us were locked down around September, on 18th August, the Constitutional Court made a ruling that would help other women in the rural setup, where think of this health center where a mother goes and is expected to have all these facilities. So this ruling has really changed a lot in the health sector. But like my colleague has said, I think Civic Space TV is trying to bridge the gap where information dissemination is much more important. So I find that most people don't know about this ruling, but also there is a big shift in terms of how government is making sure that this ruling that resulted from a rural woman, 2 rural women dying. Of course, there are others who have died since or who died before. But for these 2, the Constitutional Court made the ruling and instructed the permanent secretary of Ministry of Health to make sure and the minister to make sure that they report to Parliament each year as to what they have done. And I can tell you, we have since acquired money not only from government, because we should be at 15% under the Abuja Declaration, but they have gotten loans that, as we speak now, they are trying to answer that. So my thinking, I wouldn't want to add a voice of giving a picture of somebody who can be my mother, somebody who can be my wife, to put them in a picture that is not human, that is, but I can only say that the enforcement, and I know that's where you're going, but the enforcement of human rights has begun. And from the health side, where I'm a health writer, I can say something is happening. Only that in this country, so when we have a problem and the problem is being fixed, we don't look at it. We now look at another problem, fix another problem, but forget to remind people that goes to a health a lot that is happening out of a constitutional ruling that maybe we'll be discussing later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, we are going into the second part of our discussion. We have all talked about, rights of women, as they should enjoy them, and more so the fact that the rural women are on the fringes of society. They do not experience rights the same way many other people experience them, mainly the people in urban areas experience them. So that brings a bit of a disparity. And where there is failure of us, one group, to enjoy their rights, the Constitution of Uganda has enjoined the right to access justice, or to enforce actually one's rights. If someone is not, does not feel that they are enjoying their rights, really, they can go to court to enforce their rights. And I'll want our panelists to help us understand what enforcing one's rights through courts of law really means. But for simple background, the Constitution provides for rights, among them the right to health, the right to life, which also includes the right to livelihood. Livelihood means that each and every person is entitled to the right to earn a living, to live in a way that enables them live. Let's say livelihood can be a person's job where they get their livelihood, where they get the salary or money to help them buy food, to help them buy necessities and the basic needs that help them live. The right to farm on so someone's ability or the access to a farm, to a garden, that is also all part of the right to livelihood, because it's in that garden that someone is going to get their food to help them live, okay? Shelter, being able to have shelter, that is still, part of the right to life, because you can't live without shelter, you can't live without food, you can't live without water. So many of these, also these rights are very interconnected. Now, I want to go to Tracy. Help us understand what enforcement of rights is, and help us understand how this has also been, should I say, expanded by an act of parliament, should I say codified. Help us understand what enforcement of rights means. And essentially, we also go into that act.
Thank you so much, Martin. So I think I'll begin with saying that for every right, if there is any right, then there is an obligation on the other hand. So if there are right holders, then there has to be duty bearers. So if my right has been violated, then I can actually go to courts of law and seek access to justice, like suing the duty bearer or the person who has violated my right. So in Uganda, like you have said, rights are provided for in the Constitution, specifically Chapter 4, which you can call the Bill of Rights. And maybe there are also other rights in the national objectives where they are justiciable by Article 8A of the Constitution. Now, when you talk about enforcement of rights, you just go straight to Article 50 of our Constitution. It says that any person whose right has been violated can go to a competent court and can go and seek access. But then when you look at that provision in clause 4, it talks about Parliament enacting a law to enable people and people to enforce their rights. And now that was since 1995 when the Constitution was made, it had not been done until 2019. And what we would do, if your right has been violated, you would go to the High Court, because the High Court has inherent jurisdiction to hear all matters, including human rights, claims on human rights violations. But then in 2019, an act of parliament was passed into law, which is the Human Rights Enforcement Act. And this, when you look at the preamble of the act, it says it's effectualizing Article 50 of the Constitution to enable us enforce violations of our human rights. And basically, okay, I don't remember if you told me to delve into the act, but before that, you would only go to the High Court. But this act introduces something really interesting, that a person can actually go to a magistrate's court to seek access to justice of their rights. The only difference is if your non-derogable right has been violated, you have to go to the High Court. But if your derogable right has been violated, then you go to the magistrate's court. So derogable rights, all the rights, Martin, you were talking about, such as let me say, right to property, housing, livelihood, all those are derogable rights. All those rights that are so pertinent to a rural woman are derogable rights. That means the magistrate's court is a competent court to hear such claims. So maybe I will come back later, and we expound on that.
Thank you. Tracy has helped us understand where this enforcement comes from, the Enforcement Act comes from. And I want now to come to Hanipher and ask, is it possible for women to use this act to enforce their rights, or it's just a law that the government just did their part, they tick that box? But is it in essence possible that this law can be used effectively for women to enforce their rights? You could also share. Done.
Okay, thank you so much, Martin. And thank you, Tracy, for that clarification. But I think, you see, Martin, in Uganda, we have laws very well. But the challenge comes where they just remain like they are not implemented. And according to what Tracy was telling us, I want us to go back to bring it down to this raw woman. Before the raw woman goes to the magistrate or whatever, those upper courts, how about, do they know how or where to go in case of these small issues? Let's talk about the LC, the parish, the sub-county, or the district. So, Martin, to answer you, we have laws very well stated in the Constitution, like according to how Tracy was saying, if you read about this human rights thing, it clears everything, as in everyone has a right to have those rights. Well stated there. But if it comes to implementation, my dear, things change. So I think we have a very big role to play here, because if we are advocating for this rural woman, enforcement, I think it should also go with awareness. You're enforcing something to this lady who is ignorant about what you're trying to do for them. They don't know how they can benefit from what you're telling them. So I think it starts with the awareness. This woman should know. Martin, for your own information, some women don't know their rights. They are there dying in silence. So we have laws, which is fine, but I think it also takes another effort to let these people know their rights. And if they are violated, even...
Thank you very much for that perspective that you've given. I want to come back to you. Goodluck. You've listened that women do not necessarily, these laws have been broken down. A woman may not necessarily get justice because there are many issues, there are many, inadequacies here and there. She has talked about the courts, the LC, courts. She has talked about parish, level kind of where issues are had, and she has wondered whether, there is those are able to help women access, justice in a way. So, what would you give as Goodluck, help us understand what can be done in your perspective to better the enforcement of rights, mainly by the rural women. How can the rural women better enforce or call to the enforcement?
Thank you very much. My quick thinking is that every other cycle of after 5 years, we elect the leaders. These leaders promise us heaven and earth. But again, the other day I saw on TV a school in Bunyangabu, children with jiggers, the classroom broke. I mean, where they are studying is a place that is not fit to be a classroom. Even also this week, I think 16 children, as we speak, are in Mbarara Regional Referral Hospital. They were hit by a brook in Chiruhura. When it rained, the broke the class and the roof. So children were injured. But my quick thinking is that do we have leaders in these places? Because I want to add on this, that with civil society organizations, but also when you go to the Enforcement Act of Human Rights, which has been explained by a colleague, is that they say you don't necessarily need to wait for a woman whose rights have been tampered with to be the one to report. Anybody, the act spells out that anybody who is concerned, it's like we have debated here before, a journalist who took a picture when a vulture was devouring or eating a child, and you keep taking pictures instead of saving a child. So, and we had the journalist, die out of, condemnation and all that, and he killed himself. Now, let me go back to this, is that all of us have a duty. When you see one of the panelists here is leading a traffic awareness, he's walking all around the country trying to do something about a problem that he has seen. So even us who, I come from Kabal, the women are there. Those who are suffering, what have I done about it? So that's why I was saying that for me, if I look at the cycle of 5 years, I don't want to say they are wasted years, because you find the same leaders, whatever they campaigned on in 2021, 2021 is going to be, they are going to be the same issues. So, but not much. I don't want to go into leaders because I don't follow them a lot. Let me go back to civil society. So I want to thank the civil society organizations who have moved from lamentation to doing something. So, for example, we have now this TV, and we know that it is being supported by civil society organization to make sure that we amplify on the communication. Now, so there are others who are dotted across the country. What are they seeing? What are they doing? So someone went in court in the famous petition called 16 maternal health case. They went to court in 2011. It took 9 years for the judgment to come. And as I said, as a journalist, from where I sit, I am seeing something being implemented out of court, out of the enforcement of what we are saying. So I don't know whether others are following the other sectors in education and others, but for me, at least, I have followed in the health sector. And I can comfortably say that as we speak, I think today, 81 health facilities are being remodeled under AMCHIP. Other 14 health centers are being worked on. One of the stories I've written about in regard to this court case and how the ministry is implementing is in Nabbaale. In Nabbaale, if you visit a place called Wanale, there is a rock, a cliff called Wanale. The World Bank went there and people cried. They didn't think that human beings were staying in that part of the world. But what has happened is that the Ministry of Health has upgraded a health center to a health center 4, though it will keep operating as a health center 3 because now other laws have to be changed in order. But this health center 2 is going to have a theater at Wanale. This is one of the hard to reach places in the Elgon mountain areas. So meaning something is being done. Now, the question I want to ask is that when some of these, because my previous speaker was saying that there are problems, there are, so for me, if we keep generalizing these things, I don't know whether we shall move. But from the health sector, I have seen something is being done, and it is as a result of the petition that has helped to make sure that the Constitution under Articles 8A, 39, and 49, if you read together with objectives 14 and 20 of the national objectives, that the government was forced to make sure that those articles are implemented, and the court ruling has been made. And I can assure you, my other calling I could ask every one of us who is on this panel and those who are listening is that let's have our MPs increase the budget of the health sector. As to the Abuja declaration, which was to be 15%. So that we don't see, we cater for this rural woman. But if we continue lamenting or generalization, I think some of the actions are going to be missed, and then the public will not know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your clarion call to government to increase the budget of health to at least 15% as mandated by the Abuja Declaration. And I mean, we have to also note that the government of Uganda finances very little of the health budget. The health budget is, I think, the biggest part. I'm not sure of the percentage, but over 50% is funded by donors.
Alex, if I can help you on that one, I think now close 60% is funded by the government of Uganda.
Right now, okay, that's
Yeah.
That's. I hope it's
This is how far we have gone because of that court ruling. Something is being done, but because it is not being mentioned, it's not being given airplay. So it just dies there, and so people don't get to know that even what is being done today is being done as a result because of that court order, and the Minister of Health and the technical team must appear in Parliament each financial year. That was as per the court ruling. Thank you very much.
Okay. That's really good to hear that the government of Uganda has stepped up and is funding, the health budget more. So I want now to go, because we've reached the last part of this discussion. I want to hear from now, Tracy, you'll give us the practical, steps, like bullet points of how rural women can use this act to go to a court of law to enforce, their rights. Of course, important also to mention is what role does, and I'll come to you, I think that will be a question that will be left to Hanipher. What can civil society do to help in this enforcement of rights? You've heard that, in fact, the law gives, and from the Constitution, of course, and the Act, give permission, or they allow any person to take an enforcement action to court on behalf of another, including an organization. An organization can take, because an organization is a corporate person, and also other individuals in their own right. So you will help us on that, considering that you work with communities. And as we conclude, good luck. You also, in just a few steps, you help us understand what role does the media have in that. Now, Tracy, please give us those bullet points in a minute.
Thank you, Martin. So I cannot emphasize it enough that this Human Rights Enforcement Act is the solution to human rights violations of rural women in Uganda. There are things I did not explain about the act, but this act allows a person, including a rural woman, to approach a magistrate, to go to any magistrate's court in their locality, approach a magistrate and state their human rights violation orally or in any form and in any language. What does this mean? That first, if I do not know how to read or write, I can actually go and talk to the magistrate. And it is this magistrate who will deduce this complaint into the language of court and into any other format. Or if I know how to write, then I can just write. I don't need to come up with a plaint or notice of motion to take my claim to court. I can just write. It can even be in form of a letter, right? And in any language that I understand. And it is this act puts an obligation on a magistrate to change whatever I have written into the English language, which is the language of court, and then a hearing can go on and proceed. They'll give me what they have written, then I'll go and serve them upon the respondent. And there is also a provision in this act that says that if a magistrate receives a matter that has been brought under this act, they will give it priority. That's why for us at Civic, when we have helped a number of people to access justice, either on their own or with our support, And these cases, you look at land matters, let me say a woman is being evicted of the land by the husband, or by, she's a widow and she's being evicted of the land by relatives. Cases get done in like 2 months. Because of that, they give them priority. And there are different orders that they can give, like restitution, compensation, damages. So this act is really the solution. You go to court without putting in any money and you can actually access justice. Now there is that issue of people do not know about these laws. What needs to be done as civil societies and other people, even government, is to empower women, to create a sustainable environment where women can actually go to court, go to those rural areas and tell them, teach them, take away that bias that they have in the judicial system, tell them they can actually act in any language they can, in any language they know, and they get justice. Thank you so much. I've exceeded my 1 minute.
Very much. Yes, over to you, Hanipher.
Well, thank you, Martin. I think there's a lot that should be done such that this woman can know how to fight for their rights. One, I think the civil society, it has to keep raising awareness. Let these women know their rights. Let them know what to do. Let them know where to go. So I think it's all our responsibility to keep on sensitizing. We do community sensitization where you have to go direct to those rural areas and talk to these ladies. You tell them what they're supposed to do and how they can always fight for their rights in case they are violated. Then I also think we have to continue advocating for these women's rights because they are vulnerable, they are voiceless. So we have to keep talking on behalf of them. We have to raise their voices because, like we've said, the fact that they are vulnerable. So, and for us to know, if you not, at least you help them, you talk on behalf of them, and maybe their problems can be a little bit solved, or the situation can be averted a little bit. Then there is empowerment. My strength is always on empowerment. Any woman, if a woman is empowered, then they are in a position to do everything on their own. I hate it when I hear that someone says, oh, women are vulnerable. No, an empowered woman has never been vulnerable. So we have to empower these women. We have to give them skills. We have to train them. We have to educate them. As in, this is like a continuous thing. It does not stop. Actually, these rural women, they have the capabilities of doing a lot of things. Like I've told you a scenario where a woman was beaten, and when she went to the courts of law, they said, in Chinyakwe, that's how they said, that this is an abomination to report your husband. So I really believe these women, they have a lot in them. So it's like we are just seated on them. If they're empowered, if they are trained and educated, I really believe they can always get those privileges and their rights entitled to them. Then I also think, like how my other panelists have said, it's the time to act. We have lamented enough. We have talked a lot. So it's time for us to act. If really this woman, maybe her rights are violated in one way or the other, what have you done? My dear journalists, they are good at taking pictures other than acting. So you've seen this woman is being battered. What have you done? You've captured the pic, but have you helped this woman to get justice? So I think it's time for us to act. Then there's also another thing of mobilizing, like our friend has talked of, where we have to mobilize. For example, in our community, you can get some people who have, for example, like you mobilize resources. There are people who need there are people who need like skills. You can mobilize and bring people to train them. So we mobilize resources like how our colleague was talking about the health sector. So I think we also have to go on doing that, such that we uplift this rural woman. I think it should also be because of location, but it shouldn't be tagged that this is our local vulnerable woman. Let it just be location. But if I went to the village, you can meet those ladies. They can participate in politics. They have a lot to do. They are mothers of our nation. So I believe a woman deserves all the rights, and they should be empowered so much, such that even their families and the communities at large, plus the nation at large, will also get uplifted. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much. Now, Goodluck, we of course, like you said, we've had this debate before, and please unmute. Please mute. Hold the microphone. Please mute. Yes. This has been said before here on this show, and Hanipher also mentioned it. Journalists should not just be taking photos, but they should also, effectively be part of the solutions. Now, this also goes into the debate that has always been there of the struggling girl, that is the girl and the little, the vulture and the little girl it must have been Darfur, the picture that was taken by Kevin Carter in 1993. He took this picture of a girl who was, of course, it was during, I think, famine and things, like that. And that place had also been ravaged in a sense by war. That was in Ayod, actually, South Sudan, a place called Ayod, and there was famine. So the question was, and there was the little girl struggling, almost about to die. Then there was a vulture waiting to eat this girl. This gentleman, Kevin Carter, took that picture. Of course, the story is that that girl eventually made it and did not die at that time, made it to the support center, I think, where food was being distributed, and was able to get food. The girl later died of, I think, some other issues, maybe also related to the conditions at the time, but didn't die that day until maybe some years later. Now, the question was, should the journalist have taken that picture, or should the journalist have carried that little girl to the food center? Okay. There is still a big debate. Many people think that that picture was enough to bring to the world the plight of people in Sudan, in that area of the famine, and also the other issues that were affecting that place at that time. Many people think that this journalist should have just carried the girl to a food, center. And of course, like you said, this because of the very many things this gentleman saw, they affected him. They affected him, and eventually he killed himself. Now, Goodluck, what is the role of journalists in this?
Thank you for that explanation. Let's go to the women in journalism. Sorry, the women in journalism. The journalists who are women. The women who work on programs on radio stations every day. When you were talking, I felt I need to put a request to you and the management that one day maybe get us these women who are out there. Let them tell us whether they know some of these things. Because, it's very sad that when you go to the rural setup, the only talk is about the politics. It's about the football. It's about these other things. Now, the worst part in this country is that the journalists don't specialize. And that's why, for me, I've told you that if you ask me about NSSF and all these other things happening, I might tell you what I read. But deeply, I have for the last 7 years, I've decided to write about health. So deeply, I know what is happening in this sector. And every day I see people, try to, but for me, the women in journalism need to be the torch bearers, to add on the voices of the ladies on this panel, that they have a lot of power. Every morning they wake up to speak on these radios. In the evening, they take us through the evening short drives. But what are they saying? Are they empowering another woman who will replace them? Or it's them who have, there's even another debate in leadership, that there are women who have become women members of parliament for ages. They don't want to sit, and the names are known. That you have become so big, you have the money, you have been empowered, like my colleague has said, an empowered woman, but you are still going for this affirmative action seat for women. So for me, I think the leaders and the journalists need to particularize some of these cases. Let them follow cases, even if it takes 10 years. You have seen that a case took 9 years in court, but when the Constitutional Court made a ruling, when we were under lockdown, of course, people were talking about their issues that time. I can tell you, I have followed this and something is being done. So it means that all of us, we don't need to speak about, and for me, I've always avoided generalization and talking about Uganda. I cannot be everywhere in Uganda. I have decided to follow one case at a time and make sure it reaches the conclusion.
Thank you.
Get us the women in journalism, let them come and tell us whether they read.
Thank you very much. Good luck. We have reached the end of our week's show. And indeed, like you've had Goodluck say, journalists should tell this story. Women journalists should emphasize the rights of women. And there should be deliberate intention on the part of women journalists, of course, not only women journalists, but on the part of men also, to uplift, to highlight the rights of women and how a rural woman can surely enforce their rights. Through all those radio stations, through media in channels like this one, I think it's important to be deliberate about issues to do with women. And it takes all of us, it's not just a woman's issue, because we know if a woman is doing well, society will do well. Because women always want the best, and they provide the best for society at the end of the day. So indeed, like they said, when you educate a child, you educate a nation. And indeed, when you empower a woman, you have empowered the entire nation. Thank you very much for being a part of this week's show. I've been your host, Martin, and I wish you a great week ahead. Thank you to our discussants. Thank you to the Convener Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic TV for bringing this together. And we wish you a great week.